And here we are for an episode of Dualistic Unity Social. It is Tuesday, which means after this, we either have a roundtable or a call-in show. And I think it's a roundtable.
Indeed
So
it is.
that's very exciting. Thank you for the confirmation. I wanted to mention, because I know we've said this previously, and I know with yesterday's classic episode where we talked about, I think, the importance of facilitating growth. We've really recognized this on a local level where we are taking different groups that we meet within the community and bringing them together where they're finding new ways to interact with each other, and that's helping everybody across the board. We're very much acting as kind of like a connective pathway between people,
A bridge.
facilitating growth by providing a space and an environment that makes that easy to do, very much like the retreats. With that in mind, the roundtables are really a good chance for people within the community, people who have a project, are offering a service, whatever it might be. Maybe it's an idea. You want to talk to people about it. You have an audience that wants to hear about what you're doing. The roundtable episodes are a great way for you to come on to an episode, introduce yourself, promote your project, promote whatever it is that you're working on, whatever it is you want to share with us. You know, and true. I mean, you will be live, which means you might get some feedback. You know, maybe we'll disagree with you. God forbid. But the point is that you will have that opportunity to, you know, essentially not put your money where your mouth is, but to put you where your vision is, you know, to put yourself in there, introduce yourself, to take a leap, to take that energetic step forward in one way or another that commits you to the path that you want to be on. Because so often we get caught up in just paralysis, I guess, is what I'm looking for. We get so caught up in the, I don't know how to move forward, that we don't. We don't move forward. We're too busy looking for the right step instead of just making one. And so I think a big part of the podcast, for example, the groups where we are now, given how the business has been growing and whatnot, it was the first day. Let's record an episode. Let's toss it online. You know, Amanda decided, I'd like to be a host. I'd like to help at retreats. Just started doing that, threw herself in. One step at a time, all of a sudden, this Dualistic Unity, the audience, the group, the insights, my life as a whole, whatever you'd like to call it, has grown. As a result, has grown and changed in a miraculous way. And so I would say it always just starts with, you know, take that first bite, take that first swing. You know, I know I just referenced a song by A Perfect Circle called Eat the Elephant. And if you get a chance to listen to that song, please do. Because how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
But you got to start somewhere, right? It's like jumping into the pool. You can't learn how to swim until you jump, until you do it. Because there's a point where it's like you're on the edge. And it's like you got to make that jump and start to figure it out, and giving yourself some space to do that. And like get used to the waters, like get used to the temperature, recognize that like, oh, you don't have to, you know, do it perfectly right away. Like it kind of plays out naturally. And there's an element of trust that's built just from making those choices and decisions. So yeah, speaking of the roundtable episode later, if you are at that point where it's like, hey, I got some stuff I want to do, stuff I want to share, like you can be super specific and like talk technical stuff about your business, or you can just share yourself, your story. That's a lot of times what people connect to most. Like we know that with some of our Being High episodes or some of our any guest episode. A lot of times we've had people come on, like brands, founders, and they are very much just like use it as an advertisement for their stuff. And then we've had certain situations where the person's just hopping on as themselves, and a person, just like anyone listening, who happened to, you know, jump into some uncertainty and, you know, take a risk on themselves and figure something out and learn a lot along the way. And like each and every step, there can be so much fullness. Like we were talking a lot about yesterday, just about like everything going into this, like whatever this dualistic unity expression is, and the willingness to just see where it goes, to allow it to grow organically. Because the important part, and that goes for any business, like any company, it's the experience itself of like building something is cool. Like I've been thinking more about just like building furniture yourself, and like that whole process is like, that's exciting. That experience itself, like that, there's a fullness there. And like we've gone to either side, you know, like do something you don't like to be able to buy a table, instead of just like being willing to take the time to learn to do something like that, because there's a lot of cool stuff in there. So I was all over the place with like business stuff and sharing things, but that's you could do that on a round table, and that could be your little segment.
Yes, absolutely. While you were talking, I heard this little ticking noise, and I wondered, is it a woodpecker? Is it a metal pecker? Because it sounds like it's pecking at metal. Either side note, but
could just be a guy that's a pecker.
It could be. I don't really want to think about men that are peckers right now. You know?
Pecker man.
Pecker man. Are they related to Peeperman? No, I'm just kidding. Oh my goodness. But yeah, the roundtables are a great opportunity for an expression of potential in any direction, like every moment. And we're excited to share this particular opportunity with all of you. So it is an open invitation, and you'll be able to join us as a tier 2 and tier 3 Patreon member. And I think that's a really cool exclusive benefit for our Patreon members. And then I like that we've been thinking more about different ways that we can add to the Patreon benefits. And I like that perspective, for the most part, is the way that we're doing business and living life is, you know, what can I add? What can I do versus what can I take? How am I going to benefit from this? So, you know, just thinking of different ways that we wanted to offer new things to Patreon members, the roundtable, but then yoga classes, you know, exclusive episodes, you know, and we're just constantly trying to think of more ways that we can do more and create more. Because thinking from that kind of mindset, a growth mindset, a creative mindset, it leaves very little room for doubt and paralysis and lack.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because, again, this is a social episode, which means we're social. It's a conversation. It's not just us talking to each other.
There could be
Sidebar from Johnny West. Do you ever fart and blame it on the dog?
Never on the dog. No, I kind of wear anytime.
That's fair.
I've done
That's
it.
fair. I mean, why be ashamed of it?
I have
Exactly.
had it.
You know?
Yeah.
On a different note, I have definitely had a dog in my life since I was a little girl. I absolutely blame the dog. I was a little girl. You think I'm taking responsibility for my farts at 7? No. I mean, not that you couldn't, but I know I did it. You know. So I will admit to my childish passing of the buck.
Now, I want to say, first of all, Johnny, thank you so much for the comment, because it really does kind of give a good example of what it is that we're realizing is the most important thing about this conversation. Is the conversation is really all about, you know, self-honesty and being able to come to terms with uncertainty as a whole, finding faith in yourself and all of that. But that's really not what it's all about, because that all sounds very serious and dire and self-helpy. And while that's important to a point, what is ultimately the point? To get to a point where you live your life, which means where you're not second guessing everything you do, where you don't take yourself so seriously that you can't have just a candid conversation about a human thing where you can blame having, you know, farting on the dog or you know, you can do anything like that. It is really about that kind of conversation and just being willing to have it. You know, and I would love to see just any of our spiritual gurus talking about that. Like, wouldn't you like to see, you know, Eckhart Tolle, for example, just answer that question about blaming it on the dog without making it all about his fucking pain body?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, well, you could see why we would do that. You know, just saying, you know, joke around a bit, you know, just say, well, you know, not the silent ones, but the loud ones. Yeah, that's definitely coming from the dog. And my dog's a Chihuahua. Like, that makes it just funnier, you know, as a whole, but play with it, because that's what life is. It's not about making this all serious. And this is something I find, and I've said it before, in the non-spiritual or the non-dual and spiritual groups, there's almost this like desire to reach numbness in the same way that we do as pharmaceuticals. Like, everybody strives for that monotone lack of emotion, that perfect calm on the water.
No
And
highs,
don't get
no
me wrong,
lows.
like that all has its place. That's great. But for the most part, those moments are for you. I mean, your experience with other people, your experience with other versions of yourself, your experience in relationship, in action, in flow is something that should have feeling. It should have emotion. It should have all of these things, but it can have these things without the tinge and the toxicity that goes with selfishness, where all of a sudden those emotions become self-defining and therefore a threat rather than informative, and rather than, I guess, a process of becoming more aware of how aligned you've always been. Right? Those emotions can be a beautiful experience until you're the one having them specifically. They are your emotions. You are not just dealing with the emotion, the perception that goes with it, and the thoughts that it breeds, because we all go through that. All of us have an emotion of anger. And with that comes different thoughts that make us angry. But the emotion, the experience, the anger itself, that is universal.
Yeah, everyone experiences that. And so just that willingness to, because it's really an application in all of this, there's no words that do it. It's like, it's your experience, like your willingness to like jump to something yourself and relax. And it's interesting when it's like you can feel relaxed and then feel like you almost can't, like you come up to this point where it's like, oh, can I not? But I think a lot of times it's like this feeling of like even knowing what you're feeling, like knowing and being able to label it as something that should be dealt with additionally, something that I right now have to do something about, instead of it just being a part of my experience right now. That is something that I can have this experience while that's going on. Like both can be playing out. Like you can feel certain things and still be paying attention and involved in the experience, because it's, as soon as it's a variation in the the ups and the downs, all of that, it's like, oh, this is different, this is more intense than like what I was feeling before, and I'm gonna call it this, like anxiety, for example, or nerves or tension, or even calling something tension. It's not really that. That's still a thing that's like, oh, tension's the other end of relaxation, so I gotta do something about this experience, instead of it being like, maybe there's none of the words that can do it, and you don't really know what that experience is. Then it's like it's easier to pay attention to this and make the most of it, like not have to take yourself seriously, because that, I think, with the non-dual conversation is, it's like they're still taking themselves, a lot of times when it becomes the monotone, it's like they're taking themselves so goddamn seriously that they're just going out the other direction to just suppress themselves so much, to assume that they're just this energetic contraction that doesn't go up and down. It's like a stagnant, energetic, I am nothing, everything sort of feeling, but it's like complete, disregard of the experience that you're having right now, and the influence that you have on the experience that you're having right now, when you're not so, focused on yourself, how you're doing, trying to, maintain some point of view of like, how are things going right now? How do I respond to this? And what do I do in response? And so, the questions, like the talk, it's funny because before I went to like sort of habitual, just like, well, logic. Have I ever done that? I don't think so. No. And it's like, it can stop there. Or it's like, maybe I haven't, but it's only because, my farts don't smell nearly as bad as my dog's. And so anything that wasn't absolutely fucking rancid, I ever knew was a person, because it was so extreme. And so it was like, mine weren't intense enough, to blame it on the dog. I didn't have shitty smelling enough farts. And no one did. It was another.
Oh my God.
It was like, dogs can only hear the whistle, the dog whistle thing. It's like, that is totally fair. I forget the comparison I was going to make with farts, but It's like another decibel level of scent. It's the intensity. It changes your whole experience.
I love that there's like a
that's why I
built-in
couldn't get away with
anti-fraud fart system. Because they're so uniquely.
Nope,
so unique.
couldn't be.
No. That's a 0.2 on the dudometer. That's that's how I know
That's
it's
way
fluffy.
above. No human could reach that unless they reach ultimate.
Right, unless they only ate Taco Bell for a week. No hate to Taco Bell there. No, they're great. I've definitely enjoyed them, but I just just being able to take our analogies in the weirdest places. But it's because it's like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Why not? I want to explore an analogy. I want to explore examples. Reality is, for more or less better words, it's like Play-Doh. And it's like do play, like it's just do play. Because why not? You could stress and you could be upset and be totally zoomed in on that and think that that's all that you can do. But you've always been a space for multiple experiences, for multiple feelings, for multiple emotions. You were feeling doubt and excitement and curiosity before you had the words to describe them. And it almost feels like the words came first before the feeling, but it's not that way. It is in fact the opposite. It's the feeling that comes first and the word that comes after to try to shrink the feeling so that it's more manageable, more definable, more controllable, because now I know what it is. And if I know what it is, then I know how I can manage it, control it. But the feelings are so expansive, and you can feel things like why we have certain words, bittersweet. That's one word that describes two seemingly conflicting emotions, but it's just the depth of that experience is just not clearly bitter and not clearly sweet. That word is just another synonym for gray. Bitter and sweet could be black and white terms or black and white concepts, and bittersweet is very much in the gray. And I appreciate words like that remind us that feelings aren't so black and white, even when the words make it appear that way.
Good answer. Nice. We appreciate the questions. We have more questions. We're going to do our best to cover these throughout the episode. But if you still want to join us in 45 minutes, we're going to be doing a roundtable episode where we also take questions. So just keep that in mind. Can you talk about activation energy in terms of executive function? For example, like getting the energy to start a new hobby, like furniture building, or entering into a new social community. Now, I find this funny because, and again, I used to be a big part of the whole motivation thing. Like I was a motivational speaker. I used to use it in, a good portion of my business activities and working with other people who were, being trained and whatnot. It's all about that motivation. And so I would say that the problem is that you always end up back at this feeling of not having any motivation unless it's something that you should do. It's not actually self-derived. But for something like this, of like starting a new hobby, I think we automatically start to question if we can do something outside of the familiar once the consequences of sticking to the familiar start to crowd us. And I think that's it, is that we're still growing, but we hold on to what we know. And then it starts to conflict with us because it feels like we're outgrowing the fishbowl. Like all of a sudden it's like everything's too familiar. There's no enjoyment in it anymore. Everything's just going through the paces. All of your relationships are just keeping up, the appearance of the relationship to make sure that, from the outside, everything looks good. Like it just loses all of its zest. And so you immediately start looking for something more. There's a feeling like there's got to be something more. Now, immediately we come back to that addiction to the familiar, though. Despite going, there's got to be something more. They're like, I don't want to do that, though, because I'm used to the familiar. I'm comfortable. And so I would say that one of our biggest problems is that we try to find a carrot to pull us out of the familiar, right? Like, if I go after that, but that's still the familiar. We're used to chasing carrots.
Yep.
So we don't realize that that's getting fucking dull too, right? So now what we've got to do is just watch the consequence. Eventually you are going to come into such conflict with your ever tightening cell or your fishbowl that you will just take the first step. You'll get so frustrated and so disappointed and so fucking depressed and just so in your head about things because you know what happens if you don't do this new thing. and you're unhappy with it. It's starting to bother you. It's starting to feel a little bit like there should be more to life, that there should be more to your experience. And you'll take that first step. So if I was going to say anything, I'd say you can skip that part right fucking now. You can just despair right now. Just go, yep, I know exactly what doing the same thing over and over is going to do. It's going to get me more of what I know. You could just admit that to yourself right now. Feel whatever you got to feel about it. Let it go and get up and go and do something in the same way that you would after going through some emotional turmoil where you end up crying and bawling and maybe curling up in the fetal position for a little bit. But at the end of it, you finally have to go, well, I can't do this all day. And you get up and you do something. And that's how this starts. Just get tired of what you know. Get tired of the familiar. Admit you already are, rather than, beating around the bush, trying to get up the courage. Just admit the reason you want to get up the courage is because you're sick of what you know.
Yeah. And one way or another. And it's exciting because when you really settle in and look at life for what it is and this experience for what it is, it's why not do more? Do more new things, try more new things, jump into new situations and environments and see how you adapt, because there's a process there that's that adaptation process that maybe if you haven't done something new for a while, it's you don't even remember how exciting but also jarring, which is a component of the excitement that is that getting used to the waters of new situations. And then that can be not a carrot to follow, but just a way that you can live your life is just expanding your experiences, continuing to jump into new experiences, because that can be sort of, again, not a North Star, but something you get good at, is jumping into new experiences. And not even, because I know with familiar or unfamiliar, it's nothing's ever exactly as it was, and so even you can get sort of set on this oh, I got to keep trying new things, every day you're doing something new, and it's okay, well, find a balance there for sure. But
that's your new habit.
Yeah. New one unlocked. There you go, following the structure again. Yeehaw. But yeah, and just being able to keep, because that's where faith in yourself is built. There's a point with familiar, comfortable situations where the faith in yourself can't be built in the same way, because it's that's been explored and covered. And so it's seeing your experience as a lit up map in a video game where it's just open exploration, and the edges are dark, and it's just taking steps into those dark edges and expanding, exploring, so they become more lit up, and all of a sudden you have a very, very full experience. But it isn't always just seamless all the time. There's jumps, there's shifts, there's changes, and they just continue on and continue to play out. You can stay at sort of forefront of your experience and just keep paying attention to what's going on, and being informed by that is a very different experience than sitting back and considering everything all the time and thinking all the time. It's recognizing all the considerations happens here. All the considerations are here. They're not, the hypotheticals, the theories, the thoughts, the focus on figuring out situations in thought, via thought. It doesn't ever guarantee something. So if you want to guarantee, pay attention to what's going on, because this is what's going on, and there's a sensitivity there that is informative. Believe it or not, there is stuff that informs you right here about your whole life and situation and everything that thought can't figure out, because it's not here, it's farther from here. And so yeah.
I love it. It definitely, there's an appreciation for conceptual knowledge, but there is no way that conceptual knowledge could ever supplement experience. And I love the phrasing, experience is the hardest teacher, because it gives you the test first and the lesson afterward. But I wonder if experience could be also viewed as the teacher and the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
A tessin?
A
teacher? I don't know. We're working on it, but just
Definitely got to rebrand Leisha.
I know.
We don't need leashes around.
Not leeches, leechers. It would be different. Emphasize the A.
Latching leeches.
So that's grunts. We assign value to grunts and noises, and we create words and concepts, and then we forget how malleable they are and how flexible the words are. And I feel like that's a representation of how flexible reality is. And yet we seem to think that because we treat concepts as like concrete, that reality must also be concrete. But both are just as flexible as you want to make them.
Yeah, well said. We have another question here. What if, I'm going to say what is the struggle if your significant other is stuck with their idea of themselves?
Oh.
Now that one's tricky, and it's just because it's so like, and I get what you're saying, like that might be the case, but I think the bigger question is why you're stuck on the idea of yourself and your partner, right? Because if you have an idea that they shouldn't be stuck on their idea of themselves, that's based on your idea of yourself, right? That is self-validation in itself. The need to change them at all, maybe they're doing exactly what they need to do. Maybe there's stuff happening underneath the surface that takes time that you're not aware of, and that trying to hasten it, trying to get it to move at your schedule, get it to move according to how you perceive yourself to be growing, is actually making it more difficult for that person to change. So I would say that it's a good question, because relationships can sometimes feel like that. Like, God, if they would just stop, being so uptight. And it's like, but when you're uptight, what you really need to do is show yourself a little empathy and accept that you're uptight for a reason, because you're protecting things, and those things aren't necessarily something you need to protect, but it's causing a loss of clarity. And so rather than trying to get them somewhere, be the environment where they can relax, be the environment where that tension can be reduced. And perhaps what you'll find is, rather than trying to get them to see beyond the idea of themselves, you will let go of the idea of them that's putting additional pressure on, and will give them the space to let go of that idea a little bit more, because the tension's not there. The need to grab for it isn't so in their face.
Yeah, because if it's not about the words, then it is about, the experience, the environment. There's as much as it would be nice if you could say some stuff to get across to someone and change their experience situation. It's the same thing with our personal experiences. It's like, someone commented about knowledge and experience. It's like, experiences can give you knowledge, but knowledge can't give you experiences. And that's the same for, relationships and interactions. Like the talking things out, it's like that can be a component, but a lot of it is like the words are coming from certain feelings. The words are coming from the experience that you're cultivating. And it's not to say if you're more relaxed, there's more leeway, but it's like there's very little for them to put on you. And a lot of times they're, left with themselves more, that gives them, that opportunity. But sometimes it's a little bit of space, or at least like not constant attention all the time, that like can help allow for some of that communication.
Yeah, just I like what you guys are saying. It doesn't necessarily need to be a problem for you if your partner is quote unquote stuck with the idea of themselves. That's just the experience that they're having, that you're also sharing with them. And there's no obligation to be in conflict with experience unless the experience is somehow not meeting an expectation. And expectations, as believable as they are and as useful as they sometimes feel, they often hinder more than help. So if you are upset with someone or wanting them to change, it's like, maybe see that you wanting them to change isn't really for their best interest, but it's for your best preference.
Well said. we do have some more comments and questions and whatnot. But before we continue, I just wanted to remind everybody we have a roundtable episode in a half hour. If you're watching this live, you can just stay here on twitch.tv/dualistic unity or YouTube Live or LinkedIn. We're also streaming on X and Facebook. So you can find a lot of places to join us. But if you would like to join in the comments section, do join us on Twitch or YouTube Live, because we definitely receive those comments. If you would like to be on the episode, you can use that QR code right there, or go to patreon.com/dualistic unity, and you will find the form to sign up for our roundtable episode today. This is available for tier 2 and tier 3 members. I know we already have 1 or 2 people signed up. Last week, or the last episode, we had 4 or 5. You know, some weeks there's not a lot. Some weeks we're overflowing with dope people. So we would love to see you there. And it's an opportunity for you to have a chat with us, introduce yourself to the audience, and actually be in a podcast episode. It will be published after the fact as an episode of Dualistic Unity, which you can find on any podcast platform.
Wherever you look, there we are. Yeah, we got Dualistic Unity pretty well covered in there. I like that, because it's looking back at the name, even just like us going back and forth with the name, like Dualistic Unity, like I couldn't, was that something that you had in the back?
No, sir. It came off the hip and basically just went, this sounds really good, because it's kind of the point.
Yeah.
And you went, no, all right, for now, I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
That was it.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Almost 3 years later.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, if you got anything you want to share or talk about, the roundtables are a great time. They're always a lot of fun.
Yes, they are.
Very
And
similar to Patreon.
And if you are currently not a Patreon member and you're not sure if this is necessarily your bag, we also have a call-in show every second Tuesday. So not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday and the alternate Tuesdays after that. We have a call-in show, totally free. You don't have to be a Patreon member. You can just use the link that we provide during the episode to call in from a phone, from your computer. You don't have to be on the screen. You can just do audio if you like. It's a great opportunity for you to be a part of the episode, though there is a limit of 10 minutes on the call-in show. Also, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, we do a free group Zoom that you can join. It's free to register. We do it every Wednesday, except when we're hosting a retreat or there's some other kind of event happening. If you're interested in going, go to dualisticunity.com and click on live events. Registration's totally free, and we'll see you there every Wednesday for an hour-long chat. It's a lot of fun. A lot of people show up. Conversation goes all over the place. You can be funny. You can be insightful. You can just listen. There really is no expectations, but it really is just a space for you to be yourself, which is all this is. And I wanted to go in this direction because I think it's really important, because people keep asking us, what is the podcast about? I would say authenticity. More than anything else. And I think that's why Dualistic Unity is so appropriate, because to be authentically yourself is to be both sides of the spectrum. It's to recognize the hero and the villain. It's to recognize the doubt and the arrogance. It's to see the entire spectrum of what you are as a being within a dualistic experience, and to accept that. And in accepting that, to stop the relentless litany of narrative that goes through your head about yourself, second guessing everything you do, trying to figure out what you should do, what other people might do, how other people might perceive you. All of it is an act of unnecessary division when you could just be yourself. And in doing that, you are both dualistic and unified. And you have an entirely different impact on the world around you. And so I would say that if the podcast is anything, it is about authenticity. It's about how powerful you are when you're not doubting yourself. When you allow yourself to inform all of us with everything that you are without holding it back just because you're afraid of how you'll be perceived.
Yeah, it's the authenticity. It's just the willingness to show up and recognize too that spectrum, that recognition that there is no way to know your value and how you're doing. Like, even seeing, it'll hit me sometimes when we're singing karaoke that, you know, I'll go up there and like sometimes have the thought like, oh, I want to sing this one well. And then it'll hit me like, or I'll assume that I'm not singing great or whatever. And like, I don't know who's out there. And not that that's like so much consideration all the time, but the recognition that you're, on this spectrum of perceived value, just a total question mark, and somewhere, above, below, like it's totally unknown. And so to assume with anything that you do, like anything that you're experiencing, even singing, you assume you're a bad singer and you talk about how shitty of a singer you are, and someone's a worse singer than you, like they're going to feel even shittier about themselves. And then it can hit you like, oh damn, I'm kind of just judging something that I'm assuming that I'm expressing without any idea, without any sensitivity to it being within this, spectrum of perceived measurement out there, and you don't even know what people are hearing or what they're taking in. So the thought to try to know what you are, what you're expressing is the thing that, gets in the way a lot. It's something that you have to think about in that experience when you're not so zoomed in, on yourself and taking yourself seriously, trying to have control over yourself in a sense. Like when that isn't the case, like your mind opens up, like there's a shift in feeling where it's like there's more ability to utilize it, but it's like if you're focused on yourself, it's like that's where the focus is like on that point. It's some sense of certainty of where you're at now and where you're going, or what's exactly is going on. And like you can't, you're never going to figure that out. You're never going to know that. And so to continue to try and think about that and have control, like it doesn't make much sense once you've been through like and tried to do it. It's like you don't have to anymore, but it's that leap into the pool too. It's like you gotta, there's the focus or the letting go of the focus.
Cannonball!
Big splash.
Into the water we are. Oh my God, I love it. And when you're saying like, there's more, when you are thinking about yourself less and you get yourself out of the way, you would say that there was more ability. And my brain interpreted that as attention. There's more attention. And then I thought about the relationship between attention and ability. And don't you usually have more ability when you have more attention? And, an example that comes to mind is like extreme sports. Like it is really hard to be overthinking how you fucking burnt that meatloaf when you are launching on a motorbike off of a hill at like 60 miles per hour, and you have like 6 people around you, and it's a race, and it's an X bike race, and you're in the middle of doing. Like it's really hard to think and do at the same time. And so that's why I love the example of extreme sports, because you can't afford to be thinking. You are in the middle of doing, and that's because there's so much more attention that's available because you are not thinking about you, the idea of you. So the ability has just skyrocketed, the ability potential. And so when you're saying like the podcast, what's it about? Authenticity, and you can't authentically be yourself if you're not paying attention to what's happening in that moment. And you can't authentically be yourself if you're not relaxed, if you're not, and that's why I love the Holy Trinity, relax, pay attention, be yourself. All of that are basically the same thing. And all of those are an expression of authenticity. So one word can be taken in so many directions, just like this conversation. And so it has been really fun to answer that question lately.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a little bit of time left. So if you haven't checked out the podcast yet, please do. Dualistic Unity. You'll find it anywhere on any podcast platform. And really it is about not just what we're talking about, but the ongoing process of applying it to your life after a lifetime of applying the very opposite. Because it's not black and white. It's not like you're just going to get it. There's no it to get, because your life, it's just that you have an option to perceive yourself in one way or another. Foundationally, you can perceive yourself as an idea and therefore separate, or you can perceive yourself as just what you are moment to moment, letting go of that idea of yourself that you're trying to protect, trying to hold up, trying to use as a way to measure your value. You can let go of all of that. And that is an option that you're not used to. You did not grow up in a system that in any way encourages that. There is no way that you're just going to go, I get it. And anyone who says they do, it's full of shit. Absolutely, because it is an ongoing process of not necessarily just unlearning everything that you've learned, but recognizing why you held on to it, what the benefit was, and the fact that that benefit came with a cost, whether you want to see it or not. So the podcast is all about just that ever deepening relationship with yourself. That's all it is. And we're not telling you anything. If anything, we're just going through the process ourselves. And that's it. You can join us as we question all the shit that we hold on to and recognize why we're holding on to it, and jump into conversations with other people doing the very same thing. There's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing to learn. There's no insight to memorize, no concept to grasp, no recognition, none of that. A series of them, maybe. But ultimately, it's just about being yourself. That's really what this comes down to. Being yourself without the need to be more, without even the thought that you should be more, to allow yourself to fully pay attention to everything you do, so you expand so much faster and with so much more efficacy than you currently do by trying to chase some carrot or run from some stick.
Yeah, it's really the continuous process of being here and looking at all the ways that, the reasons that you distract yourself, or noticing them at the very least, and handling, your ideas, your stuff, your reasons, your thoughts, the focuses, but recognizing like there isn't even guarantees in all those things. And so it's just the continuous process of paying attention and seeing how it plays out, and seeing how it plays out in your own life as you apply it. Because again, it's like we are not like necessary and vital to any one specific person's journey or life or anything like that. It's like you're the expression. Like you, without looking to so many people or thinking that there's a reason to try to look to someone else, like thinking there's anything out there that could get you to a better spot, like to be in yourself. It's like you can't get to a point where you're good with yourself. Like you're good, you're more relaxed, you're more willing to just pay attention without so much need to try and pick a trajectory specifically, an experience. Like prioritizing your experience right now comes down to that, relaxation versus stress, and the focus on something that's going to be a guarantee, or even that there's any guarantees right now in the experience that you're having, and being able to look past that a bit.
We are down to our final minute, and I'm going to pass it over to Amanda to end this episode. Again, join us in 15 minutes if you can for an episode of Dualistic Unity Roundtable, and if not, we'll see you tomorrow and the day after that, because we're here all the fucking time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, thank you so much, everyone. This has been an amazing exploration of authenticity and discussing it and the application and expression. So, a lot more to explore, a lot more to feel, and excited to share it all. So thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you at our roundtable later. Bye.
Take care.